Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey everybody, welcome. I want to introduce you to my guest today, Janine Kwoh, whose business is called Kwohtations. Kwohtations is a one-woman handmade stationery company and letterpress print and design studio based in Brooklyn, New York. Owner and artist Janine Kwoh makes cards, prints, and other curiosities that reflect and celebrate a diversity of identities and life experiences. Her mission is to expand the representation of people and stories around us, and for everyone to see a bit of themselves in Kwohtations cards. Also, she firmly believes that humor is key to savoring the good times and surviving the hard ones. Janine prints each card one at a time on an antique printing press and then paints them in by hand so that each one is truly handmade and unique. And I myself can vouch for this because I have been a customer. So welcome, Janine. Really happy to have you here today.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Yes, me too. So I met Janine at a pop-up shop over the holidays, and my daughter was already a fan of her work, and we went to see her work, and I loved it immediately. And she happened to be in the shop that day, and we started talking, and I said, I bet you were doing something before you were doing this. And I think I also asked you, are you doing this full time? And you said, yes. And then I said, what did you do before? And so we started talking, and I realized, wow, you've made some significant professional transitions. And I'd love for our listeners to hear more about that.
Sure.
So where did you start? Where did you get your start?
Oh, it's been a little bit of a windy road. So I graduated college with a business economics degree, primarily because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and it seemed very practical. And right after college, I ended up working at an investment consulting firm in Boston doing private equity research. I didn't even really know what private equity was at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it was, in hindsight, a really great start. You know, I worked with a lot of brilliant people. I got some really invaluable training in writing and analysis. I stayed there for 3 years, and I just knew I wanted to move on to something that wasn't just intellectually challenging, but something that just felt more personally meaningful to me and more socially oriented.
Interesting. So were you already an artist at that time? Had you already been doing creative projects and things?
So I don't have any sort of formal art background. I've just always sort of loved to craft and tinker around and build things. I actually think when I was a kid, I wanted to be an artist.
Really?
Yeah. But it wasn't really something that I considered seriously. So it's like funny how things come around full circle.
Well, I'm guessing that given that you said, that you had majored in business economics, that, and you said that was very practical, that there was this party that probably maybe you thought pursuing the arts was just not practical, or I don't know if you were even thinking about that.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, it was something I've always kind of loved to do on the side. I never imagined that I would be doing it full time if you asked me, 10 years ago.
Wow. So what's your earliest memory of connecting with your creative side?
It's funny. I completely forgot about this until my sister reminded me. But when I was little, my mom was really into playing ping pong. And I would take these ping pong balls and glue them together, like for a head and a body. And then I would make clothing for them. So I would dress them up in all kinds of ways. And it's funny because I think that's kind of the first iteration of Kwohtations, because if you look at my cards, they have these very simple figures on them.
Yes, yeah.
And I didn't even really make that connection till my sister brought it up. So that's kind of my earliest memory of just sitting by myself and making art just, because I loved it.
Wow. I like that. Ping ping pong ball dolls. Never
Yeah.
would have dreamed of that myself. I love that. I used to play ping pong too, though. So there was something stirring in you for a long time going back, but you went off to college. I think it's interesting. We talked about this a little while ago before we started recording here, but I think it's really interesting that you spent a good part of your early formative years in Shanghai. And I'm
Yeah, that's
curious
right.
to know even though I know you were born and you started your earliest years on the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I think it's interesting to hear about what influences you think the places, that you lived in such different places. How did that have any impact on how you saw yourself growing up or moving forward in your life?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think there's something about straddling multiple cultures and multiple places
Yeah.
that was really formative to me. And I think, at least I like to think it helps me sort of be able to imagine myself in someone else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of what I try to do in my cards. It's like imagine what someone else is going through, or take my experiences and extend it to others and try to write cards that meet that sort of feeling or meet that need.
Mm.
I also think having moved around a bit and not having like a single hometown, like we talked about, frees you up a little bit, so I don't feel particularly tied to a certain location. And I think that's extended itself to my career. Like I don't think I have one vision for how I see my life being.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Do you think you felt that way earlier, like when you were studying business economics? Did you feel that way too?
To a certain extent, although, like we said, I think the practical considerations kind of overshadowed a lot of that.
Yeah. Because I think something you said a little bit ago, you said, I never dreamed I'd be doing this full time, right? And having a very creatively and I guess inspired business, that a lot of your ideas for your cards and other things that you create really come from within you, within your own values. And I think there's a part of you that's quite whimsical. I know that some of your work that I've seen, it's both very poignant and very human, really touching people, I think, at a deep place at the same time, sort of a little bit whimsical, a little bit snarky in some ways, which I personally really like. And I'm encouraging our listeners to keep an eye out for your work. But I do think it's really interesting that you went from the financial field into, becoming self-employed and doing your art. So how did you decide, or at what point did you reach a certain point where you said, this isn't working for me, or maybe you were unhappy? I don't know. But can you tell us a little bit about the journey from what you were doing to what you're doing now?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really evolved organically over time. And I've allowed myself to take baby steps towards this point over a lot of years, which I think is helpful in terms of my personality and where I'm at. So I started Kwohtations purely as a hobby, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I think at the very end of 2011. So it's been a while, but
yeah,
it was, as I said, at that time I was working in finance, and I think I just needed some creative outlet. So I just started making these cards for fun. I put them up on Etsy, online marketplace, for handmade goods, just to see what would happen.
Yeah.
And I sold a couple cards that way, which was really exciting, but I still wasn't really thinking about it as a business. It was like a hobby. So I did that for a number of years. And it really, I don't think it was until, I want to say 2013, 2014, that I started to do craft markets. I got into my first shop, and I started thinking, okay, maybe this could be a side business, not just a hobby.
Yeah.
So I did that, and it kind of, it grew. I got into more stores. I spent more time on it and more intentionally tried to grow it. up until last summer, when I made the leap and went full time.
Oh, so when you say last summer, you mean the summer of 2018 or 2017?
2018.
2018.
So it's only been 6 months.
Wow, since you went full time on your own, but prior to that you were fully employed somewhere else and then doing this on the side. So it's I think this is really interesting as an entrepreneur myself, thinking about, when does something move from being a hobby to then sort of a side business? Like, how did you think of it as a hobby versus then starting to think of it as a business, even if it was a side business? What were some of the distinctions there? Not just in terms of whether you were making money or not, but I think almost in terms of what your mindset was about who am I professionally? Who am I becoming?
Yeah. No, I think part of what helped make me make that jump mentally, honestly, was some external affirmation.
Oh.
So I think at first, it was like a couple people on Etsy, but mostly my friends and family, which is great. And they're so supportive. But I think there's something about having people who don't know you personally come up to you and say, I love your work, or your work touches me in some way.
Wow. Yeah. Well, this is what happened when my daughter and I met you that day, right?
Right. I think there's something that made me feel like, like maybe this idea has legs, like outside of being a hobby. Like maybe there's something here that I should explore further. So I think that helped me kind of make that initial mental shift. And I think something else that I'm still kind of grappling with is the idea that I am an entrepreneur.
Aha. Yeah, because it's still fairly new, right?
Right. It's fairly new. It's very small. It's just me.
Yeah.
So I think just like owning it, like I am an artist.
Yeah.
Is one part of it. Because like I said, I don't have a formal background in art.
Right.
I am an entrepreneur, even though my business is small.
Yeah.
I think that's been like a journey for me also.
Yeah. And yet you have, a business background, so to speak, but I would imagine that it feels very, very different than the business you're in now. But I wonder if some of that background also gave you a little more of a grounding in feeling comfortable stepping into this. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah, I think so. Actually, I think that having worked for a decade before doing this was really helpful, probably more than having the degree.
Yeah.
I think there's something really helpful about being used to getting up and working all day.
Yeah.
When there's no one to tell you what to do, and how to do it, and how to like plan and prioritize and track and look at data. Like all of that is very helpful.
Yeah.
More helpful than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Or I think.
But from a lifestyle perspective, yeah, you made quite a shift, even though you were contemplating it for a while, right? So I like what you said about how you really took baby steps. It started off as, hey, I think I'll do more of this. It's a hobby. Then, oh, I'll open up a site on Etsy. And then, oh, maybe I'll do a few holiday fairs or art shows. And then things just kind of start. It sounds like you put more intention in it. I don't know the degree to which you put the intention in terms of really marketing it or shopping it around, or whether people were just finding you. I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, I mean, part of the intention was going out to stores, emailing stores and seeing if they'd be interested in carrying the cards in the shop. So it was more of taking an active role rather than a passive role in the business.
Right. Okay. So so you really started to shop it around and market it. And in those earlier years, was it only cards? Because I know that you do create other items now, and I'd love to hear about when did you start to expand your line, so to speak?
Sure. Yeah, the beginning it was only cards, and they are still, and I think will always kind of be the heart of the business.
Yeah.
I did expand into other products, so I have totes like bandanas, tea towels, and art prints now.
Yeah.
A few years ago. And I did that just to explore and see what it would be like. I really love making greeting cards, and I think it forces you to create in a very special way because you just have like a very small amount of space in which you were trying to say a lot sometimes.
That's very true. Yeah.
But working with different mediums also kind of frees you up to do other things. So you can put a lot more on a tote bag or an art print that you wouldn't necessarily fit on a card. So I kind of wanted to give myself the freedom to do that.
Oh, wonderful. And when you look back to your, decade of working in finance and where you are now, is there anything you miss about the work that you were doing before?
Yeah, so I worked in finance, and then in between that and this, I worked at a nonprofit.
Oh, tell us about that.
So sorry, I skipped over that part. But
Okay.
So I was in finance for 3 years, and then I left that job to work at a venture philanthropy organization.
Oh, wow.
Which is a nonprofit that helps fund and scale up other nonprofits.
Oh, interesting.
So I did that for 6 years, and that's where I was when I left to do this full time.
I see.
And I know it's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, I love the freedom and the novelty of not having meetings, and emails has not worn off yet. But so I love that. I do miss my coworkers. I miss the social aspect of work sometimes, having people to bounce ideas off of, helping you think through what's the best next step.
Yeah.
That I think is incredibly valuable, and I miss that. And I have been trying to find that in various ways, but I think it's just different when you're a solo entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think you're right. And yet there are options, especially in the world that we live and work in now. There's lots of ways to connect with people, but you do have to, it's not sort of put in place there for you. You really have to create it yourself.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Good that you're aware of that you can build that in. And like, how often do you come up with new ideas? How does that work? I'm curious. I love thinking of myself as a creative person, but I don't know that things would come to me that readily. But I'm so intrigued.
Yeah, I'm still figuring that part out. I think that's actually been one of the biggest changes that I felt from doing this part-time versus doing this full-time.
Yeah.
So before, I would make them as, I was struck by inspiration, but I didn't really put any pressure on myself to create new cards, like X number of cards each year. I think now that I'm doing this full-time, I'm wanting to release more products more consistently. So that's been a new experience for me. Like, how do you get inspired and create on more of a schedule?
Yeah. And I would imagine that could be very challenging sometimes, because there's got to be those days where just nothing comes up, that feels like an inspiration to create something out of.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for me, it's kind of been a multi-step process.
Yeah.
So I get inklings of ideas wherever I go, like from conversations, from things I'm going through, from books I read. Anything kind of sparks a vague idea, and I kind of keep a running list, and those kind of noodle in the back of my head for weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
And then I've been trying to be more disciplined about sitting down and trying to finesse them into something more concrete.
Yeah.
And so it's also, I don't know, it's more of an art than a science, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. Although there is I guess on the more concrete side of things, you are running a business now. And how has that been going for you? Are you still learning new things or discovering new things as you go along, or?
Every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have been doing this a while now, but not in this iteration. And so it feels like everything is still very new. Like every piece of the business, I'm kind of reflecting on, trying to figure out how to do it better or how to do it differently now that I'm doing it full time. So, for example, even coming up with new card ideas and releasing new products, like that is different for me, even though I've been making cards for a long time.
Right, because it's with a different intention at this point. Even though the inspiration may still come from a deeper place, there's the more, I'm trying to make a living doing this now.
Right. And sometimes I find that there's a tension between what I think will sell and what I want to make. So that's something that I've been thinking about, and how to, like, what are the cards that I think like match the holidays for which people want to give cards and yet feel true to what I'm trying to say.
Right, right. Interesting. So what's next for you? What are you looking forward to in 2019? Do you have any specific goals or things that you're hoping to reach?
I want to continue growing the business. I want to continue making some new things besides cards.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those are some new products that I'm noodling over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think just feeling, I'm hoping that by the end of the year, because it'll be my first full year in operation as a full-time business, that I will feel like it's a legitimate business.
Yeah.
That's like probably honestly my goal, just to have my operations running a bit more smoothly.
Yeah.
Having a bit more strategy and around what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing. I'm curious though about that juncture where you decided really to leave a full-time job, and was it that the cards and everything were starting to take over, or what is it that made you decide to really pivot?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was a couple things coming together at the same time. So it feels to me like the decision came very slowly and also very fast at the same time. So I have been doing this on the side for a while. I had played around with the idea of doing it full time for a few years.
Oh, really? So you'd really been thinking about it and kind of
I
planning
had been thinking about it, not really seriously, but just more of like wouldn't it be interesting or wouldn't it be great if I did that? But I honestly didn't think that I would do it.
What made you think that you wouldn't do it? It was just sort of a fantasy for a while.
I think because I'm really risk averse.
Oh, interesting.
As part of it. And I had invested a lot in my career on a certain path, and and I really liked my job at that point. So I think, a lot of people, when they make the jump, they're in like a pretty toxic work environment or they're pretty unhappy. And I wasn't. And I think that made the decision a lot harder.
Yeah.
Like I had a good job. I loved my coworkers. I believed in what I was doing. And also I wanted to try this other path.
Yeah.
And it was getting a little bit hard to juggle between Kwohtations and my job. So it had grown. And so I was kind of feeling the pressures of time and energy and also taking time for myself on top of that.
Right. That's always a challenge, right? Taking time for yourself.
Right. So the juggle was getting a little bit harder, I would say. And I decided to make the leap, I think, for a few reasons. So one, I'm 31. So I'd been working for about a decade. It seemed like a really good window if I was going to do this, where I have skills and savings built up. I feel more confident in my ability to take on whatever's coming. I don't have children, so it just seemed like the right window for me to take this risk.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second piece, honestly, is that someone I was really close to passed away a few years ago. And, I had all of these emotions and experiences that I didn't really know how to deal with and express. So I ended up putting it into my cards. So I ended up making these sympathy cards that said, all the things that I needed to hear for myself.
Yeah.
And then it kind of hit me that Kwohtations had morphed kind of from this funny little hobby that I had into something that was really important to me and had become this really important outlet.
Yeah.
So I think that shifted in me also, just like recognizing that this is like an important part of my life. And then also I think when something really terrible happens, it kind of changes your baseline. And like for me, things that used to scare me before like quitting my job just didn't seem that scary anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that was also, to be honest, like part of the timing of it.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially when someone you're close to and you're still at a younger part of your life and you don't expect to lose people at that age, at least not, it sounds like not the way you did lose this person. And it does make you take a step back and say, hey, what am I afraid of? what is it? I know myself, I know I'm risk averse, but what's the risk here? Like I'm really
Right.
curious about the conversation you had with yourself, as you made the transition, what that was like for you.
Yeah, I had a lot of conversations with myself and with people really close to me.
Yeah.
And I think that was also really helpful. Like, I really thought about it holistically, not just in terms of what I wanted to do as a career, but really, what did I want the next couple years of my life to look like, and what was important to me, and how could I structure my life in a way that made more room for that.
Yeah.
So I came out of those conversations scared but confident, I think, in my decision. And I think something that I really needed to be confident in was knowing that I was going to be happy that I made this decision regardless of how it turned out.
Yeah.
I would only be happy with that decision if Kwohtations like took off when it was great and I, became like a resounding success. Like, I also wanted to know that I would be happy I did this if a year
Yes.
from now I'm looking for a job.
Right. Right. So you had confidence in your ability to take care of yourself, regardless of what you were doing work-wise at the time, it sounds like.
Yeah.
I tell people that a lot. When people worry about what they're choosing to do, I say, look, if all you need to do is bring in some cash, there's a way to do that for most people. There are ways to just bring in cash if you need to support yourself. So, what can you do to really help yourself feel far happier and fulfilled in what you're doing day to day? What would that, what might that look like, even if you need to bring in some cash on the side? So, it sounds like, Janine, that you had some plans in place. You knew yourself to be a little risk averse, but you definitely prepared yourself for a period of time where you would maybe have to dip into some savings, or that you saved for this. You set the intention, and it sounds like you had a circle of support around you, which I think is very important when people are trying to make a significant transition. And you also knew that if you had to look for a job, maybe after a year of giving, you gave yourself a year, I don't know if that's how you thought of it, that you go get a job if you need to. Sounds like you really handled a lot of things, both sort of from a place from your heart, but also from a very practical side. Is that true?
Yeah, I think so. I think I found that balance that made sense for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think a lot of times when we think about entrepreneurs, we see people who just go into it full time, and we wonder why we can't do that. And the truth is that everyone is different. Like, everyone's personality is different. I think if I didn't do it in the way that I did, I wouldn't enjoy it. Like, I think I would be too stressed about the instability. Whereas that would work great for some other people.
And it's interesting, though. I think that a lot of people have this perception, especially when you make kind of a significant change, as you did, right? From a field where you were very analytical and dealing with finance and economics, and then starting a business as an artist. That sounds like a big leap. But what you're telling us is you spent several years really chipping away at it and putting some pieces in place, both personally and professionally, to make this happen. And I've found so far through many of the interviews I've done with this podcast that most people do take some time to plan. But I think from those of us from the outside looking in, we think that you made some kind of grand leap and that you just threw caution to the wind, but you really didn't. And you do have a skill set and a solid resume should you need to find a way to make a living in another way. Of course, we hope that you can stay doing what you're doing if that's what you choose to do. But the key here, I think, is there is some planning and time involved, and checking in with yourself, having those conversations with yourself. Are there other things that you would advise someone else who's not necessarily even making a change into entrepreneurship necessarily, but just thinking through a change where there's that voice in your head that says, I think I want to try this or that. What other advice might you give someone who's considering their options?
Yeah, I would say that I spent a long time when I was younger agonizing over what my passion is
Mm,
and why I didn't seem to have one and everyone seemed to be finding theirs. And I actually think it's okay not to have a passion. And I think
mm,
it lowers the bar a lot if you just kind of follow your interests and what you're
mm,
curious about. I think not making the leap unless you're sure it's your one and only passion makes the stakes so high. But if you
yeah.
just, you know, say, I'm curious about this thing, I want to learn more about this thing, even if it's not interesting to me 10 years from now, and you follow that, like, I think that's fine. I think that's great. And I
Yeah.
think, for a lot of us, what we're interested in and what's right for us to be doing changes a lot over time.
Absolutely. Definitely.
I think that it was a helpful realization for me to come to.
Mm. It's like you had to rewrite your book of rules, right? You had this idealistic view of what it meant to follow a passion and that it had to feel a certain way or look a certain way. And when you let that image go, it actually opened up some passions for you, didn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think, it's true for me, and I think for other people too, that your path doesn't really have to make sense to you or anybody at the time. I think a lot of the arcs that we have in our life like make sense after the fact,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we reconstruct it and put meaning to it. But I actually don't think that there are any any wrong career moves. And
Mhm.
as long as you're learning, I think that you're moving forward.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Too often we let fear drive us. And when we're driven by fear, we actually lose a big part of the picture of what's possible. And even if we explore something that we end up saying, you know what, it's not that, like you said yourself, I had to try this, I had to see what it was like. And I applaud you for that because I think that you're spreading a lot of good feelings out there. And we live in a world where we need good feelings, not just these days, I think always. And the more people are spending their days or the better part of their working years doing something that leaves them feeling purposeful, fulfilled, satisfied, wow, what could that do for all the other people around you, or even just, you know, spreading that good energy out there? It's got to have benefits that go even way beyond someone getting a smile on their face when they look at one of your cards. I know I'm excited to see what comes next for you and what you work on, and continue to be a good customer,
Mhm.
because I really do love your work, and I'm delighted that my daughter pointed me in that direction. I also love the name of your business. I'm curious to know how you came up with that. So your last name is Kwoh, Kwoh,
Mhm.
right? So Kwoh, and then you turned it into Kwohtations. I just got such a kick out of that. How did you come up with that?
To be honest, like I didn't come up with the phrase. I think my sister's friend said it.
Oh, isn't that funny?
Yeah, and I liked it. And then when I started, and completely separate from this, and
Oh,
then when I started making cards, I remembered that, and I just thought it was, too fitting to not do. So
that's great. And so if somebody wanted to see your work or learn more about you and what you're about in the world, because I know that your cards are really only a part of what you're doing now, that you really are trying to send some messages out there and support some other causes. How can people find you and find your work?
sure. So I'm online at quotations.com. I have a pretty active Instagram account
Ah, yeah.
also at quotations. And if you want, I also have an email newsletter that goes out.
Oh, great.
So
So people can go to your website and sign up for that?
yeah, sign up for that.
Wonderful.
And that has, like new product announcements, the occasional blog posts. So people want to, keep updated, then that's
Excellent.
a good way.
Wonderful. Well, we will have all of that in the show notes and more. And I want to thank you for spending this time with me today and sharing your journey. really exciting to see where it's going to go. So thank you so much, Janine. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thanks again for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Janine Kwoh. It was such a pleasure to speak with her and learn about her creative and professional journey. What is your key takeaway from our conversation? Is there something you'll put into action this week that you'll benefit from for years to come? Share what resonated with you in the show notes at workfromtheinsideout.com. That's also where you'll find all the links and resources from today's podcast. If you enjoyed this episode with Janine, please share it with your friends and colleagues. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying this podcast? I'd love to read your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find my page at tammygoulerloeb.com/Apple. Thanks for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. And who knows? Maybe you'll be my next interview on this podcast. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.